Tim, it's great to
Good.
meet you, sir. Thank you for taking a minute out today. I appreciate it.
Yeah, it's good to be here. Good to talk to you.
Yeah, good to talk to you. So let's begin our journey before we get into your life as a relationship growth expert. I want to know this. 6 years ago, this pandemic was changing our lives, really rearranging a lot of the way that we deal with relationships. How did you get through that era yourself, and how has it changed your approach to work today?
The pandemic kind of messed me up a little bit. I had moved from Florida, where I had a practice, a counseling practice, to Indiana, north of Indianapolis, just a few months before the pandemic hit. Didn't know anybody up here. I moved here to be closer to family, so I did have a couple kids that were nearby, but came up here to set up a new practice. And then, COVID hits, we're locked down. Fortunately, I'd had some experience doing video work, so I did that. But I mean, it just kind of led to a period of disconnection. My plans were off course. I mean, honestly, I think I went into kind of a depression for a number of years. And it wasn't until about a year ago I realized, man, just before the pandemic, that's about the last time I started producing new content on my website, podcast. I mean, just lost the creative juice
Yeah.
and, kind of had to examine myself and go, man, what do I need to learn from this? Get back to work, start putting things out again. But yeah, it was, I wouldn't say dark times, but misty, gloomy times for a few years that
Yeah.
certainly prompted by the pandemic.
I totally get it. And I felt during that time I did a lot more interviews than I ever did before with
Hmm.
musicians. And that was comforting because they were so strong, but there was just this pallor in the air as to when are we going to get out of it? Because in the beginning, I remember it was around spring break for the kids. And everybody's like, yeah, we'll be out for 2, 3 weeks,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And then I remember that I think a day or two after the 13th of March, spring training was canceled. And there was an umpire that was walking off the field. And he looked back and he said, we'll see you guys in about a year or two. And I was like, wait. What did he just say? There's no way. And it was like
Yeah.
he had some kind of intimate knowledge as to what we were going to do. But so I'm curious now, if we were to synthesize what you do on a daily basis for a 12-year-old brain, you're at career day, you're in a school. How do you explain what you do for a living to that age group?
Well, it depends on the age group about how it would be appropriate to tell my story.
Yeah.
Because, a key event that my story pivots around is, the fact that 25 years ago, after 16 years of marriage, I stepped out of my marriage and had an affair. Never thought I'd be that guy, but I did. Dove headfirst into it. And I mean, my world just kind of exploded. Lost my marriage, lost my career, and really floundered for a few years. But then when I started realizing, man, there's stuff I need to give attention to and started doing that personal work, and then just started casually sharing that, especially with other guys I saw going through similar things. Like, here's what I wish I'd figured out sooner, but if it helps you, great. And then with the encouragement of people, maybe considering going into counseling, which then morphed into this a little broader than counseling, like this message of anybody that's been affected by infidelity, whether you've been betrayed, whether you're the one that betrayed, whether you're a couple that wants to put their relationship back together, whether it's the ending of a relationship. My passion is to help people get through those things in a way that's healthy, not just self-protective, not just get through it and move on with life, but hey, there's something to learn from all of this. So that's my focus, spending time talking to people, helping, putting out resources that help people heal after an affair.
You know, what's interesting about that is I think about hoarders in a metaphoric way. I'm going to draw this out. When you have somebody that's hoarding, it's one thing to have their house full of all this stuff and it's unkempt and it's filthy, but it's more about the psychological underpinnings that you have to get through. So when you hear about affairs and you hear about cheating, it's part of a bigger problem. What's the most common thing that you have to address first and foremost with anybody that's looking to kind of either get over their hurt or get over what they've done?
Well, each circumstance is a little bit unique, but let me answer that in a general way. I think the assumption is, especially when you're dealing with a relationship, that you've got to just really focus on, okay, why did this break? What was wrong with the marriage or the relationship? How do we mend that, heal it, put it together so that this doesn't happen again? I happen to believe that most of the time that's not the primary issue. A lot of affairs happen in, you know, relatively stable relationships, and even the ones that aren't bad, there are a number of possibilities that someone could have taken other than having an affair. So, I mean, most of the time, one of the things I would really want to do, in addition to trying to attend to the trauma that the person that's betrayed is going through, but for long-term healing, it really is important to kind of get alongside that person that broke trust and help them get beyond the just feeling like, feeling the shame, the guilt, I'm sorry, and that sincere, yeah, I never want to do this again, which is not necessarily predictive of whether they will or won't, but helping them get beyond just that, I'm sorry, and I promise I won't do it again, to really examining, like, do you really understand how this happened and why it happened? um, and getting into the why of that, not just so we can have a clarity of telling a story of our past, but so that we can form a good vision of, oh, this is what change looks like. That version of me that can step into a relationship and do it well, that version of me that the people that love me, experiencing me in a way that is authentic and vulnerable. I mean, most of us live a life just kind of doing what's normal to us because we've learned that. And it's not necessarily the things that are conducive to a good, intimate relationship. So I think an affair, a lot of times, just points to things that need to be attended to beyond just the cheating, but in someone's life. And more, that's been my focus of just trying to come along the betrayer and say, hey, this is stuff that you can learn from. I mean, listen, my own affair will be the biggest regret of my life. I hurt people that I should not have hurt. I broke promises that I'd made. My kids carried the wounds of my choices, and they were not deserving of that. Thankfully, a lot of healing has happened to that. My ex and I have good co-parenting and grandparenting relationships. My kids are, they're, on all these years has been great healing, but they still wear the scars of that. They didn't deserve that. And I will always regret it. At the same time, man, some of my most profound changes have happened because I went through that really dark, rough period. I
Yeah.
just think that's how grace shows up in our lives sometimes, the good things that come out of the bad. It doesn't excuse the bad or make it good. It just means like, oh, there's opportunity to grow and change here.
Yeah. Well, talk about the ultimate pop culture crucifixion of that Coldplay couple last year that got caught.
Yeah. Oops.
I mean, you talk about the worst possible way. I just saw that she came out with an interview recently, and I think they were both already in transition points in the relationship that
Mm,
just kind of galvanized it. But it's
yeah.
just one of those things where my whole theory on all of that is one way or another, it's going to catch up to you. It's like anything,
Well,
right?
it usually does. It sometimes doesn't. But yeah, that was probably the most public exposure of infidelity that, I've seen in my lifetime. I've had a lot of circumstances where an affair has been uncovered by, someone calls their spouse and just, hey, just checking in. Yeah, I'm working a little late tonight. And then they put their phone in the pocket and it's not really hung up. And now the spouse gets to hear all of this stuff going on behind the scenes,
Yeah.
that that's how it gets exposed. So there are, other creative ways that
Yeah.
things tend to come out.
Yeah.
But, it's always hurtful and devastating and it changes us.
So let me ask you this. When you were 12 or 13 years old, what was your dream job? What did you want to be when you grew up?
Probably, I mean, if you'd really, I mean, I grew up in the context of a family where my career, I knew what the expectation was. If I was really honest, my passions probably moved more towards either anything in creativity, arts, theater, music, or um, science and ocean work.
Yeah.
So, I mean, those are things for my passions, but I didn't do either of those things. So,
Well, give me a snapshot of your career. Give me kind of a little bit of an bird's eye view of the timeline that's evolved to where you're at today.
well, I grew up in a pastor's home. The expectation I was going to go in to follow my dad's footsteps in a lot of ways. I mean, it wasn't like you will do this, but I knew that's was kind of the expectation, and I did do that. I mean, my affair happened in the context of me being part of large church staff. I don't, I hate to mar, it doesn't need my help to kind of mar some of the reputation of ministers in the church. So, it's not the first thing I come out with, but that is my story. I will say that 7 years prior to the fair, I was already struggling with like, there's ways that I didn't feel like I was really being authentic in my work and what I was doing. I should have stepped out just to examine that and explore that. The affair kind of forced the issue. I've never kind of looked back and regretted that aspect of not being in quote ministry anymore. Um, and I didn't know what I was going to do. I mean, my immediate jobs were delivering pizzas for Pizza Hut and selling Yellow Page ads. I mean, and I went from kind of high in the pinnacle of success and being sought out by other organizations wanting to become on staff. And then all of a sudden I lost all of that. No one really wanted me more. So delivering pizzas, selling Yellow Page ads, and eventually finding jobs that were a little bit more secure and, exploring areas of creativity. I designed websites for a while until the friends around me, as I was sharing my story, as I was beginning to change and learn and grow, encouraged me, said, you should consider counseling. And I kind of laughed at that, but it quickly made sense to me. And so, I started on that trajectory. I really wasn't intending to be an affair recovery counselor. There was still too much shame and guilt wrapped around that. But as I started doing the work, that's where I was effective. And so 2009, I just embraced it, created my affairhealing.com website, and just started pouring myself into those resources.
When you fall in love, it's part of that whole adage where they talk about love is blindness. Was there ever a part of you that thought while this was happening that there's a chance that you could get to a point where you could lose jobs and people and all of that, or was it just you're in a tunnel and you're doing your thing because you're in the passion?
Yeah, I think the tunnel, some people call it a fair fog, whatever. You're just so focused on, oh, this is meeting a need or a longing in my life. I mean, it's very self-focused, but all the things you should consider, I wasn't an idiot. So they were blips on the radar, but nothing I tuned into and really paid attention to. And you just kind of convince yourself, like, I can enjoy this and probably get away with it. And then if you even consider the cost, it's like, yeah, but I don't want to give this up. It's not rational at all. It's purely emotional.
Yeah.
Um, to
Yeah.
get stuck in all of that stuff and then it explodes and then there's all the consequences left.
So let me ask you this: who's been your inspirational force that's allowed you to find your calling now and to become who you are today?
Yeah, I don't think there's any one person. There's been a lot of different resources, different things that have come along at the right time in my life, mentors that have stepped in that have encouraged me to move forward. An uncle who was involved in counseling that showed me a lot of patience and grace as I was figuring my stuff out before I was even thinking about being a counselor myself. Various friends that would come into my life and there were certainly some resources. Probably one of the most significant books that I read was called Scary Close by Donald Miller. I don't even think it's in print publishing anymore. It's still, but it's just, it made me think differently about myself as someone who is really good at practicing authenticity, but really living it, truly being vulnerable, especially in my most important relationships. Man, I sucked at that. And I just saw the need. I've got to keep doing better. So different things at different stages in my life have come along to encourage me and push me forward in that way. I'm thankful for all of them.
So, if you could meet one person alive on the planet right now that's either doing what you're doing or that you find has overcome, has been a pillar of strength, is there anyone you would have lunch with, sit down, talk to that might help you in your work and on your journey?
Um, Number of names come to mind. Esther Perel fascinates me. But I'll tell you the name that's come in this past year a lot, and I probably should just reach out because we probably could have a conversation. Rick Reynolds, it heads up affairrecovery.com. My website is affairhealing.com. We started about the same time, and his story, I think, is very similar to mine. When he started, I think he had a whole bunch of people behind him saying, hey, let's do this and do it right. When I started, it was just me going, hey, I'm going to build a website and do this. So a fair recovery is huge, and I'm just doing my little thing over here in the corner. But, I've just always been impressed with his, willingness to put his story out there and help others. And curious about where that journey has really taken him. I see the public face of it, but I'd like to know what is the real story. And so we have a lot in common. We're probably at similar stages of our life. I'd be interested in talking with him probably.
Yeah. It's interesting. There there's so many stories of affairs, people cheating, things are happening. It's a very common thing. It's not like a needle in a haystack. So I'm curious, with having these websites and these services, who is it that is impelled to come to you? Who is it that you're looking for? How does it work when someone really wants help to come to you to do that?
Yeah, I mean, it's if you look at the numbers, probably most are people who are in the pain of being hurt by infidelity and they're seeking out help, whether for themselves or wanting to put their relationship or marriage back together again. That's probably the highest number, the biggest piece of the pie of people that are coming to the site. But the need is, it's 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 people who've been betrayed that know my story and want to talk to me to help them understand. I don't get the mindset of my husband. I don't understand how they could have done this. You went through it. Can you help me get this? Or whether it's the person that had the affair that's saying, I really am sorry for what I did, but I'm not doing a very good job of kind of earning trust back or figuring out how to rebuild this. What can we do? Sometimes it's couples. Can we keep our relationship together? Sometimes it's ones that are thinking maybe we shouldn't. Just want to make sure that they're making that choice in a way that they're thinking clearly. It's a healthy choice, and maybe that is right for them. What I've chosen to do in this past year is really intentionally try to focus more and more of my attention and effort into inviting those who have had affairs to come in and let me help you work through that stuff so you can go back into your relationship or the next relationship and be someone who is very clear on, oh, this is what I've learned. This is how it's changing me. This is what I can bring to the relationship. And by the way, if you want to know reasons why you should ever trust me again, it's not just about another promise I'm making. It's about the evidence of these things that I am working on to show up in my life. So when you see me working on those things, that's not consistent with someone who's out playing the game still, and being involved in another relationship. So that's where my passion has been focused more and more. Try how do I get in touch with more of those people and let them know about the opportunities that I can have to help them through that. But yeah, it's just all over the place of people that come with need.
Yeah. So let me ask you this. What we're talking about, even when it comes to affairs, there's still relationships and marriages, and the cornerstone of all of this is relationships. People are looking for love. So, in the whole history of arts and music and lore going into love, what's your favorite love story?
Wow, I've never been asked that question, and I have a lot of disappointments in love stories, and like that's the examples of things I don't want. Um, what's just coming to mind is my great grandparents,
Yeah.
farmers, stayed together, all their life, did the work, showed an affection for each other. I don't know the intricacy of this relationship, but they were solid. And when my great grandmother died, I mean, it devastated my great grandfather. And, I was part of being around him when I just saw him kind of deteriorate under that loss and the missing of her. And I think that was always an example of me. This is not a couple that were all lovey dovey and, oh, it can't,
Yeah.
touchy feeling, all that stuff. They were just really committed to each other, cared for each other, and did the work. In that book, Scary Close, Donald Miller says, I've come to believe that marriage is much more like farming than a fairy tale. And I think that's the work ethic that my great grandparents brought into their relationship. Yeah, you don't walk up to a stranger on the street and say, hey, let's get hooked up for the rest of our life. There's got to be that attraction, that bond. But then the work begins, and they spend a lifetime doing that work to make their relationship secure and to learn to love each other better. As what I can see and what I can tell, and and I would like to be like that.
It seems like there's there two big camps to me when it comes to relationships and the possibility of infidelity. is you have one. I think you have one group of people that they love the person they're with, but are they in love? That question. And if that
Yeah.
comes up, that seems to be something. But then you have people that just want to physically be with other people. Maybe they haven't been with enough. Maybe they just want to know. And it seems
Mhm.
like being a swinger would work for them. There's like all of these options. And to
Yeah.
me, because I've been on the receiving end of that, it's like just go do it. Just let me know. I'm fine. I'll take
Yeah.
off. Right.
I mean, as long as there's honesty and transparency and agreement, then that's not a problem.
Right.
It's when we start to lie and become secret and we hurt others because we say one thing and do another that's it becomes problematic. But that first group you talked about, that difference between love, I love you, but I'm not in love with you. I mean, I understand exactly what that means because I said those words before, but I think we really confuse that feeling of love, that limerence, which is not a bad thing. I love feeling that. It shows up a lot at the beginning of a relationship, and because there's a reason for that we're bonding together. It doesn't show up as consistently as the relationship goes on, and the only way to keep having that is just to keep going from one relationship to the next, to the next, to the next, because I want to keep feeling that high and that connection, whether it's sexual intimacy or emotional connection or both. I think the kind of love that comes with the endurance of I want to keep figuring out how to love better, and I want to do that with you. That kind of commitment in a relationship. That's that's where the effort and the work comes in to let's do that better, and the trust that when things go bad, I can still depend on you. I think there's something that's pretty valuable about that too.
Yeah. So let me ask you this. If you were to have a dream tonight, you ran into the 18-year-old version of you, and you walked into the room and had a big coffee table book that's your life, what you've lived so far, and you handed it over, would that young version of you believe that this is the life that you lead?
No, no way. No, in fact, how old was I? I was probably 19 or 20. I remember this very specifically. It was on college campus. I was maybe freshman or sophomore. And I remember walking between the classrooms, from the classrooms to my dorm room. And for some reason, I was just contemplating what is my life going to look like? What do I anticipate? The kind of person I will marry, the kind of family I will have, the career, my kids, the parent I'll be, and all that stuff. And it was so important to me to really think that through that I remember sitting down and I remember thinking, I will never forget this. This is going to be a marking
Wow.
place. I would like to see, does my life really go here? And, for a number of years on the outside appearance, it looked like it was following that path. But, my affair and all the things that blew up, there's no way I would have seen this. And you'd said, oh, this is who you're going to be. You're going to cheat. You're going to lose your marriage. You're going to be going off this way. I said, no, that's not going to be, ain't going to happen. The sad thing is, that 18, 19-year-old, if he'd followed that path, there were some important lessons that he needed to learn that I'm not sure how he would have learned them
Yeah.
without just going through the rough stuff. Maybe there was a way, but I sure wasn't getting it. I wasn't figuring those things out. It was going through the fire, going through
Yeah.
failure, having to own my stuff, that
Hmm.
stuff became real to me.
Yeah,
So,
I
so
totally get it. I get
yeah,
it. And you only understand that when you're alive long enough and you've
yeah.
accumulated a little bit of wisdom. It's a very weird, intricate way of getting to where we need to get to. So, people are coming to you as a resource to heal, to get over things. So my question to you is this: in this process, are you healing? Do each of these clients that you get to be with picking this path of helping others, has it been kind of a two-way avenue for you to heal as well?
Well, I don't heal from my clients, but if you're asking, do those experiences sometimes cause me to go into
Yeah.
self-reflection and examination? Yeah, sometimes they do. I mean, over the years, there have been plenty of times I've been confronted, especially by a woman who's been betrayed in a way that's very similar to what my own story was. And I hold it together pretty well. I've learned to be professional. I don't get lost in their story. I can be the helper that provides good, assistance and resources to them. But there have been plenty of times when that session ends and I have to back off. Man, it just kind of floods over me, and I feel that sense of, man, that's that's my story. I did that to someone, and it brings a tremendous sense of remorse and regret again to my children, my ex-wife, that just realizing I was supposed to be somebody different in their life, and I was the cause of pain and scars and so forth. I mean, I don't stay there. I mean, shame used to just hold on, say, yeah, you're a worthless piece of junk, you know? So I don't stay there. I recognize that, okay, it's good to feel the remorse, but I've also experienced forgiveness and I can move on and learn from that. But, you know, sometimes through these experiences, examining, and I'll tell you something else. Sometimes the experience of my clients will challenge my thinking on something. You know, I have
Yeah.
a view of, well, this is what healing looks like. And then I'm watching and listening to them, and I realize, oh, there are some other possibilities
Uh-huh.
here. And I really need to be open to that. I don't want to be just so myopic that when people come, there's this one path. This is what it looks like for everybody. I don't think that's true.
So, on this long, winding path of being a human being, there's all of these successes and failures and overcoming and evolving. But ultimately, when you look at that road from above, what are you the proudest of?
That I have that I have been able to kind of open my own, I don't know, sounds poetic, but open my life and my heart in ways that embrace vulnerability to my children, to my family, to other people, to my clients, you know, to some measure, because that was foreign to me before. I avoided being open and vulnerable. I will spend the rest of my life learning what it means to really be a vulnerable and authentic. Will have never arrived, but I can see the progression. And there are times now that I find myself saying something or doing something, and afterwards I pause and I know for certain, like, oh, that's something that wouldn't have been on my radar 15 or 20 years ago. I wouldn't even thought of saying or doing that. And now that's coming fairly naturally. And I'm thankful for that. We can change. And then I'm also reminded of, oh, but there's so much, you know, you can keep working on this. The work's never done. But yeah, I'm tremendously thankful for that, probably more than anything.
So, Tim, everyone has a perception of you family, friends, clients, everyone that knows you, but you run the show. What is your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
Um, I'm someone who is by nature introverted, introspective, driven by a balance of longing for creativity and wanting to bring that out in ways, but also this passion of wanting to serve and help others. And I know that sounds very altruistic. I can be selfish too, but I mean, those are two things that are really important to me. Um, and I don't know how it always comes across to others. I mean, sometimes I put stuff out there, put myself out there, or work out there that come out of those passions, and I'm not sure that's how people see it or receive it. But I'm getting to the place where I'm going, yeah, but that feels satisfying to me. That feels right to me. I feel like I'm doing what needs to be done, what needs to be done by me. You know what I'm called here to do, and so just want to keep doing it. I mean,
Yeah.
again, looking back a year ago when I realized, man, I've just been checked out pretty much after the whole pandemic thing. The last 5 years have just not, I've been showing up, but not living out of those passions,
Yeah.
just realizing, oh, I need to cultivate that and get back to it. I don't want to finish my life this way.
Yeah, totally get it. So I want to go back to that artistic part of you early on that thought you wanted to get in the arts. What was the first live concert or performance that you saw that really blew you away, that maybe made you, did you have a moment, a eureka moment like that?
Well, I'll tell you what, since I grew up in a very controlled environment, I mean, I just wasn't allowed to
Gotcha.
listen to a lot of me. I mean, I remember making little crystal radio in science class, and I'd sit in my room with the one little earpiece in that was, I mean, it was terrible quality, but I'd be tuning into stations to hear what other people were listening to and stuff. So I really didn't have those I mean, eventually, you know, I could go to concerts and see, you know, some of the artists that I really, uh, you know, respected and liked. But I'll tell you the first thing that blew me away. I mean, I just became so emotional because I'd never been exposed to these kind of things before. It's when I went to Chicago and saw Phantom of the Opera.
Yeah.
And I mean, people have mixed feelings about that, but that production and all that came out of it, I mean, being honest, what I'm saying, I could barely talk for the next hour. I was just overwhelmed with, oh, you can do that, music, and you know all this presentation, stage, and it just fired up that creative part of me. You know, in other ways, I didn't go do Broadway. I mean, eventually, I got involved in theater and acting and musicals and so forth. But yeah, that's the first thing that I remember just confronting me with strong emotion and reaction like, oh, this is something. This is a whole world I want to understand and explore more.
I went to a collective concert in the 90s. I went to so many, they all blurred together. But I remember at one point, Sarah Brightman was at one of them. And I remember being like, wow,
Yeah.
you know, that those are some pipes. And
Yeah.
if it's done, in the Phantom, it's like that would just have to be that much more um, uh, beautiful to hear that in that context. So, the most important thing right now, if people are ready for the next step, they want to reach out, they want to hire you, they have questions, any of the good business, where do they go?
Yeah. I mean, you can find access to resources, podcasts, and everything on my website at affairhealing.com. If
And you
they
got
want to get in touch with me, they can do it through the website. Set up an appointment, they can do it through the website.
This has been so wonderful. Thank you so much for taking a minute out today. I appreciate your time and your story. Best of luck with everything.
Thank you. Good talking with you.
Great talking to you. All right.